Jesse Love wins the NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship. The lights were just too bright for Connor Zilisch. NASCAR has decided to increase the number of races Cup drivers can participate in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and Truck Series in 2026, plus lower the age requirement for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. And Corey Heim, finally a NASCAR Truck Series champion. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. I watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship like most of you probably did on Saturday night at Phoenix. And after the race was over, I felt nothing. I felt numb, no anger, no happiness, just an empty void. Because once again, we watched this championship format deliver us a champion that was underwhelming. And that's not to take away from what Jesse Love and his number 2 team did. Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? They played the game as it was laid out in front of them, and they won the championship. They won the one race they needed to win in the regular season, which happened to be the first race of the year at Daytona. They won the one race in the playoffs that they needed to win, which was the championship race, and that makes them the champion. The problem is, you look over at Connor Zilisch, who had an all-time season for a NASCAR Xfinity Series regular, and now you have to tell me that that wasn't a championship-worthy season, and what the 2-car did was championship-worthy. And I think that's where this system is inherently flawed. Jesse Love had 2 wins this season. Connor Zilisch had 10. That's 5 times more. Connor Zilisch had an average finish of 8th. Now, don't get me wrong, Jesse Love had the second best average finish at 11.1. Again, really good for him. Connor Zilisch had 20 top 5 finishes. Connor Zilisch didn't finish outside the top 5 from the time the leaves started to show up on the trees until the leaves fell off the trees this year. And now you have to sit here and tell me that he didn't perform when the lights were the brightest, so he's not the champion. And that's just such a wild way to look at it. And I feel bad for Jesse Love, and he said after the race in his post-race press conference that he doesn't give a shit about people questioning the legitimacy of it. The problem with that is Jesse Love is a wildly forgettable champion. Nobody's going to remember Jesse Love winning the championship. They're going to remember Connor Zilisch having an all-time season. And Connor Zilisch being the driver that should have won the championship. And after the race, Connor Zilisch got out of his car and he said, I guess the lights were just too bright. Took a shot at a couple NASCAR media members with that because that's been a talking point for the proponents of the playoff format that, you know, you have to show up and perform when the lights are the brightest. That is certainly a talking point that has been displayed on SiriusXM NASCAR, on maybe a podcast that masquerades as a TV show over on Fox. Like, it just is what it is. And I think everybody has left this feeling nothing, honestly. And I could sit here, I could rant, I could rave. I had a scorched earth video written out if Corey Heim didn't win the Truck Series championship. I could fire and brimstone this like it was the Old Testament, sit up here like a preacher, screaming, yelling, spitting everywhere. I'm just not going to do it. Part of it's because I don't care, because at this point, like, it is what it is. We've seen this championship format deliver us flawed champions multiple times. I guess I can take solace in the fact that we know this championship format is going to change next year. NASCAR talked about this exact scenario in their State of the Sport on Friday. They nearly had an absolute disaster on their hands Friday night. They avoided that. Corey Heim wins the Truck Series championship. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then on Saturday night, it delivered them exactly what they were hoping to avoid this weekend. In the last probably year of the elimination race, they get delivered an outcome that everybody is going to be upset about. And unless you're a Jesse Love fan, unless you're his family and everything like that. And again, celebrate your championship. I have no problems with that. You played the game as it was laid out in front of you. But it's tough to accept this when you look at it and you're like, that 88 team, great season, not championship worthy. It's like, oh my God, okay. All right, one of the best seasons we've ever seen, but I guess you're right. I guess it's not championship worthy. I just think it's an underwhelming way to determine a champion. This format was introduced to produce these Game 7 moments, right? Which was ironic because on Saturday night, you could watch an actual organic Game 7 moment happen in the World Series with an actual Game 7 moment to end it as well in extra innings. And now we sit here and we're like, yeah, Jesse Love's a champion. Except I don't think he's going to be remembered for being a champion. It'll say it on his driver's suit. It'll say it in the record book. And again, can't take it away from him. Congrats to them. Again, they played the game. But I think everybody's going to look at Connor Zilisch and be like, yeah, that's the dude that should have won the championship. Like, there's no way he shouldn't have won the championship. And I know people are going to compare it to stick and ball sports, and I hate the comparison to stick and ball sports because motorsports is not stick and ball sports. Well, the best team doesn't always win the Super Bowl. Best team doesn't always win the World Series. Okay, yeah, they're flawed systems. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't think it's a very good way to determine a champion. Like, it just is what it is. I think motorsports is entirely different. I think motorsports from, race 1 to race 36 or 33 in the Xfinity Series situation here should be determined by how good you were over an entire season. I think it's harder to be good over an entire season than it is to be good, just in kind of the one race that you need to be good at, or, 2 or 3 races throughout the year. So overall, Jesse Love wins the race. Eric Almirola wins the Owners' Championship. The 88 leaves with just the Rookie of the Year title, which I guess it's good, but it's certainly not the hardware that they went to Phoenix looking for. For the second time, Junior Motorsports enters with a 75% chance to win the championship and exits not winning the championship. Ty Gibbs did it to him a few years ago. Jesse Love does it to him this time around. And yeah, I guess you kind of just leave this race with a feeling of nothing, a feeling of emptiness in a sense. It's disappointing that it happened again. I don't love that this is the way to determine a champion. I don't love the fact that you can win as many times as he did and not win. And there's people are going to be like, yeah, this happened even in a full season championship. I don't dispute that at all. 1996, Jeff Gordon, Terry Labonte. Jeff Gordon won 10 times that year. Terry Labonte won twice. How did Terry beat him? He was more consistent over a full season. Terry had an average finish that was like 2 or 3 spots better than Jeff Gordon that year. This is what it is. We see this happen, times throughout history where, the driver that finished second in the championship has more wins than the driver that ends up winning the title. And I can understand people being frustrated with that, but the old format rewarded consistency. And I think going back to a 36 race championship is the right move, a full season championship. I think you reward winning more than you did in the past. I think you give them more than 5 extra points. I think you give them 15, 20 extra points to really incentivize, 1, winning, but 2, having a bad race doesn't nab you as bad as it used to, right? I just think that this format that we have now is it's bad. I don't love it. I haven't loved it since 2014. I think it's been flawed since then. I think the flaws have shown themselves over the last few years, and it's really gotten the fan base and a lot of the industry as well to sort of speak out about it. I mean, heck, the first year of this format, it was almost exploited absolutely immediately. I mean, Ryan Newman, who had 0 wins on the season, nearly won the championship race at Homestead, nearly beating Kevin Harvick. And Harvick had an all-time season that year, like a really good year, his first year over at Stewart-Haas Racing. And imagine that happening the first year of this championship, where NASCAR talks about wanting to, reward winning, blah, 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 and then having a guy with no wins end up winning the championship in the first time of this format would have been kind of funny, honestly. But yeah, it is what it is. Congrats to Jesse Love. I think that everybody just kind of has a bad feeling. And I think it was Brian Blackford on Twitter had actually a pretty good analogy to this, where he said that you don't read a novel and skip from, he said when you read a book, you don't skip chapters or just read the ending. Through 2003 NASCAR seasons felt like reading a good novel. In 2025, I've still watched every single Xfinity race, but it doesn't feel like a novel anymore. Storylines are ripped out from under us. Chapter 1 through 20, don't sweat it too much. Everything can change in the final couple of sentences in the final chapter. And that's really what it is. Don't get me wrong, I love the sport. I'll continue to watch. This season has certainly been a long one at that. The burnout has certainly been real at times, and I'll continue to watch for as long as they're going to put races on TV. But I think there's certainly parts of it where now it's like, with this format, regular season doesn't really matter. You can skip races. Who cares, right? Like, you get to the playoffs, that's when everything really, starts to matter. So your first 26 races are forgettable for the most part. And I think that does a disservice to those 26 races, to the accomplishments of these teams, to this championship format. Like, I don't know. I'm glad it's changing, but I'm tired of talking about it. Let's move into some news that came out on Saturday as well. On Saturday, NASCAR announced that they are going to increase the number of races that NASCAR Cup Series drivers can participate in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. Currently, Cup drivers with 3 or more years of experience in the Cup Series can only participate in 5 races in each series. Next year, they can participate in 10 races in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and they can participate in 8 races in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Again, if they have 3 years or more experience in the Cup Series, that's where they get that limit at. I don't know if this was necessary, if this was needed. I know a lot of the drivers in the Xfinity Series, O'Reilly Auto Parts Series next year, and the Truck Series have talked about having Cup drivers come down and run with them helps them out. And I think that's really great. But at the same time, I worry about the series losing their identity if Cup drivers come down again and continually go on and win these races. Because we've seen this happen multiple times before. I think there's a really good tweet by Brian Mapes who said in 2015, 8 of the 33 races were won by Xfinity Series regulars, and 4 of those 8 were standalone events. Then they introduced the 10 race limit in 2017, and Xfinity Series drivers won 12 of 33, so about 36%, or it was 36%. Then in 2020, the 5 race limit comes around, and Xfinity Series regulars have won 169 of the 197 races. That's 85%. And I think that's really helped Xfinity Series drivers establish themselves as brand, establish their identities, and make themselves into names. And it's allowed the Xfinity Series to also establish its own identity as well. So I worry about them losing some of that if more Cup drivers come down to run it. Now, in 2025, only 2 drivers used up their max amount of races. Kyle Busch used up his 5 in the Truck Series. Ross Chastain used up his 5 in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. So will we see more of it next year? Remains to be seen if drivers are going to do that. Teams can do it to help sell sponsorship as well. They can kind of, promise the sponsor, hey, we'll put a Cup driver in for, 2 or 3 races here, and then we would like you to sponsor the development driver, whoever, on the other side. So kind of use Cup drivers to subsidize their drivers that they're trying to develop. That's been happening for years, for sure. But my biggest concern is losing the identity of these series. Now, it is worth noting, though, that in the press release that NASCAR put out, because they haven't announced any sort of changes to the championship format next year, they worded it as if this championship format for this year is going to continue on, which I think we all understand that it's more than likely not going to, hopefully. But they did say that Cup Series drivers cannot participate in the cutoff race for the regular season or the playoffs for those 2 series, which again is much needed because I don't want to see Cup drivers going down there and affecting the outcome of the playoffs for either of those 2 series, assuming the playoffs stay around. Again, NASCAR worded it that way because, well, they needed to, because currently that's the way that still exists because they haven't announced anything new yet. They also announced that they're lowering the Xfinity Series age limit from 18 to 17 on road courses and ovals under 1.25 miles. And I feel like that's a really unnecessary change. Call me crazy, but I think that the age limit of 18 makes the most sense for the Xfinity Series and for the Cup Series. For the Truck Series, you could convince me that it should be 17. It's currently 16. I think it should be probably 17. Now, you can maybe call this the Brent Cruz rule because Brent Cruz will be racing full-time at Joe Gibbs Racing next year, but he doesn't turn 18 until like March 30th of next year. But he would have to miss like 7 races before he turns 18. With this new rule, he can now participate in 3 of those 7 races, which is certainly going to help out. And he can definitely win at Circuit of the Americas as well, which is the 3rd race of the year, depending on who else is in that race. If Zilisch is in it or if SCG is in it, things are going to get a little bit more complicated for him there. But yeah, I don't know if this was a necessary change. I know Kevin Harvick's probably excited about it. Kevin Harvick thinks that like the ARCA series should have an age limit of like 14. It's currently 15, and I would argue that it absolutely needs to go up to at minimum 16, maybe even 17 as well, because when you start introducing these kids into adult series, these kids don't race like adults. They don't have the same, critical thinking skills that adults do. And they do dumb things at times. And you can't really go down and talk to them because there can't ever be a physical altercation or anything like that because they're kids, right? Like, it puts drivers into a weird predicament that I don't love. But NASCAR's making these changes for next year. I don't know if they were necessary, but I can understand it from a financial standpoint. I can understand it from a business side as well. But they're going to happen. So 2026, Cup drivers, more races in the Xfinity Series the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and the Truck Series, and age limit drops to 17 in the Xfinity Series. NASCAR averted disaster on Friday night in Phoenix during the NASCAR Crafts and Truck Series championship race as well. So on Saturday night, we obviously know the outcome of that, and now they had to answer questions about Connor Zilisch not being championship worthy and everything that goes into that. And on Friday night, we nearly had the same thing with Corey Heim. Corey Heim has had an all-time season in the Truck Series, probably a season that is going to go unmatched for a while. And it almost looked like he was not going to have that championship that he so desperately deserves. Because in the closing laps of this race, Connor Mozak, who had a big-time tire rub, stayed out on the racetrack. And keep in mind, his teammate, Tyler Ankrum, racing for a championship as well, needed a caution to get himself back into this championship hunt. Mozak goes around, cuts a tire down, which we all knew was going to happen, pounds the wall and brings out a caution. NASCAR calls the driver, the spotter, and the crew chief of that 81 car to the hauler after the race, presumably to scream at them if Corey Heim doesn't win the championship. And Corey Heim comes to pit road, enters in second, exits in 10th, put on 4 tires. Everybody else put on 2 tires. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to lose it. He's going to lose it. And he ends up putting on an absolutely incredible drive. On the restart, he dives to the bottom going into turn 1, all the way against the inside wall, goes 7 wide and exits turn 2 in second place behind Ty Majeski, who he's racing for a championship. Then caution happens. Tyler Ankrum gets caught up in that, despite his teammate bringing out the caution to kind of help him. And then on the ensuing restart with his 4 tires, Heim drives around Majeski, goes on to win the championship. Again, the championship that he deserves. Picks up his 12th win of the year. And if you look at the NASCAR Insights, who leads in basically every single category, there's a lot of 11 icons on there because Corey Heim had an all-time season in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and absolutely deserved to be the champion. I just can't imagine the outrage if both Heim and Zilisch lost the championship this weekend. And that's not to take anything away from Ty Majeski, but when you look at Corey Heim's season this year, for him to not win a championship would be an embarrassment to the sport. It absolutely would have been. And thankfully it didn't happen. I'm sure NASCAR sat back and breathed a sigh of relief as well. But it nearly didn't happen. But ultimately, it was Corey Heim winning the championship. And after the race, Scott Zipadelli's crew chief was like, I don't understand why you wouldn't put 4 tires on there. Listen, Scott's got bigger balls than myself and everybody else on pit road because nobody else was willing to take that same chance. And he knew his driver could get it done. And he absolutely did. He went out there and got it done. And Corey Heim picked up the championship that he rightfully deserves because he probably should have won it a couple years ago if he didn't get host of art. And now he does finally, in fact, win that championship. What he does next year remains up in the air. Expecting to see him in the truck series or in the Cup series a decent amount based on what TRD has been saying. And his truck likely going to be taken by a guy that also was in that championship 4 as well. So hopefully, I'm sure everybody knows who it is by now. But for now, we wait for the NASCAR Cup Series championship race on Sunday. I would say 4 of the 5 best drivers all year are in that championship 4. So I would say that they're all probably deserving of winning this title, regardless of who comes out on top. Denny Hamlin seems to be the fan favorite. Wild, I know, right now. But we'll wait and see how all of that plays out on Sunday. I guess the good thing is because 4 of the 5 best made it, we don't have to really have this talk of legitimate champion and anything like that. But hopefully this is the last time we see the one race winner take all format on Sunday. So let me know in the comments what you think about Zilisch not winning the title, Jesse Love winning the title, the age requirement in the Xfinity series dropping, the number of races increasing for Cup drivers in those 2 series, and Corey Heim winning the Truck Series championship finally. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.